Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Games from Almost in Full Color. Today's video is actually very impromptu. So I was just about to play the Shadow of the Tomb Raider on GeForce Now Ultimate since it just got added to PC Game Pass. So I was able to play that game for free, seeing as I have a Game Pass Ultimate subscription. And it was a great time to really talk about stutter in GeForce Now Ultimate. A lot of times when I'm on Reddit and other places, I see a lot of people always complaining about that their game is stuttering, and most of the time people always point to it being your internet. Something's going on with your internet, that's why you're getting stutter, because other than that, GeForce Now Ultimate is pretty much close to perfection when it comes to cloud gaming. And that last statement really isn't that far from the truth. But a lot of times I see internet being blamed for times when it's not your internet. And this is one of those situations where my internet is perfect, but I can introduce stutter into the game just by not having the correct settings lined up perfectly. Now, for cloud gaming, you have three things that have to marry up. You have your stream FPS down here, you have your game FPS, and of course you have your monitor FPS. So my monitor is a LG C1 TV. It's a 120 hertz VRR capable TV. Probably one of the better gaming TVs that came out in the last few years. And once all three of these are talking great, then it plays perfectly fine. But cloud gaming is usually advertised by people who use it and just in general as being a very easy way to get into gaming, and there's not much you have to do, and it kind of just does all the heavy lifting for you. Usually that's true, but there's times where if you don't really understand certain settings, and especially FPS and how these things need to talk to each other, you can get a subpar experience, and you will either blame the service or you might blame your own internet, or maybe you blame the chipset in your actual laptop or your PC because it might be old to you and not able to pump out 4K 120. So what I want to do, we're going to start with no DLSS on, and we're going to run at 4K. We're going to have everything maxed out. So we're doing the highest anti-aliasing. It's actually so high that when you turn it on, it tells you you're going to incur a very large performance penalty. But we don't care. We want that. Graphics, everything are maxed out. Everything's completely maxed. So with these being here, this is an old test I did when I was actually getting it to run smooth. So right here, what we want to do, we want to go back into our TV, and we want to go into Game Optimizer. We're going to turn back on VRR because VRR is going to be needed. VRR basically allows this 120 hertz TV to jump down between, I believe it's 40 hertz and 120 hertz, or 48 hertz and 120 hertz. Might be 40 though. I'm pretty sure it's 40, but it allows it to dynamically change its refresh rate. You can see now it's like sitting at 119, which is, this is really like a 119.99999 type thing. But it allows it to dynamically change its refresh rate to try to match up with what, in most cases, your gaming console or your gaming PC is sending out. But in GeForce Now Ultimate's case, it's actually sending two things. It's actually sending one. It's sending your stream, and that's what your TV is trying to match up to. And the game itself is kind of behind your stream FPS, where the game is running on GeForce Now Ultimate at 112 or 113. It's being streamed at 113. Your TV is seeing this 113 FPS, and that's what it's trying to match up to. So that's why you got to make sure your stream and your game FPS match very close so that there is no variation of what your TV is trying to show. And we're using VRR on GeForce Now Ultimate, which is why you see the game and the stream FPS constantly adjusting to what each other is doing. The stream is trying to always match whatever FPS the game is running at. So hope some of that made sense. But now what we're going to do is we're going to run our first benchmark. And again, this is no DLSS, everything maxed out. We said we have a 120 hertz monitor, and we're going to try to VSync at, it's going to try to do 120. We can actually turn VSync off because I know it's not going to hit 120 at this, at these graphic settings. It's just not. So we'll turn VSync off because it's just not going to happen, and it'll actually introduce stutter. Maybe that might actually be a good opportunity to show you. So if you try to do VSync on, it's going to try to stick at 120. It's not going to happen, but let's run the benchmark. So now we can see that we have GeForce Now stats down in the bottom left-hand corner. You have an FPS on our TV constantly adjusting, and we have the FPS of the game up there in the top left-hand screen, or that's what's being shown through the benchmark. So you can see basically being completely maxed out. We are sitting around 69 to 77. Oh, little teeny ping spike there. But you can see down here in the bottom left, it's around 66 to 67. You can see we're getting some slight stutter. And you see with the TV FPS is just jumping all over the place. For whatever reason, the VRR on my C1 TV does not play nice with VRR on GeForce Now Ultimate. I don't really know why that is, but it seems like the TV's variations in the frame rate is way more dramatic than what's happening from GeForce Now Ultimate. You can see here, it's kind of sitting more in line, but then every once in a while, you'll see it'll just drop right there. It'll drop to like 47, then jump up to 120, and you'll get that stutter every time. So for whatever reason, it's like every once in a while, it just like completely forgets what the sync should be, depending on what the stream is. So like you said, the stream is always sitting around like 68, 67. It's right there in that neighborhood. But then it'll jump to 120. Then for whatever reason, and that is giving me this slight stutter. Now, it's not like game breaking or anything like that. But if you've seen that, you would assume that it's your internet, like just slowly lagging behind. And if we bring up the stats, you can see that we're not getting any frame loss. We're not getting any packet loss. You could probably see the 15 total, 104 total. Those are just like little past things. But if we were getting packet or frame loss, those zeros would not be zeros during this session. Oh, that went away. Of course it did. But yeah, so we're going to hop back out and we're going to see if we can make this work a little better. But that's what I mean by these things all need to match up, because if they don't, you will not get the best possible performance that you should be getting. So, seeing as we could not get a locked 120, because of course we can't, we're going to turn VSync off. We'll apply those changes. And then what we're going to do is we're going to run our benchmark again. And that way it'll tell us, hey, we got a 120 hertz monitor. We don't really care what you're trying to VSync at from the game. Play whatever frame rates you can play, which we know is going to be an average of about 77. And the VRR for GeForce Now Ultimate on the stream side should match up to what the game's doing. And then hopefully the VRR on our C1 TV will match up to what the stream is doing. And we'll run our benchmark again. Let me see, I'm just going to flip that. That does nothing but change like the black stabilizer level and stuff like that. But I don't want the TV FPS thing to time out. All right, so now we're telling the game don't try to VSync at all. And everything is sitting pretty close to each other. Again, the TV jumps to 120 for whatever reason. There's not a whole lot of stutter. It actually is playing pretty smooth. But as you see, it's very slight. It's very slight, but there's just little stutters. And there goes one right there, and the TV dropped to 40. But as you can see, the stream nor the game ever dropped to 40. So for whatever reason, again, the VRR is just like, it's almost like it's losing communication with the stream. And I don't know if it's because GeForce Now Ultimate is doing VRR at the same time. And for whatever reason, they're getting like maybe a slight clash every once in a while to where it just kind of drops the synchronization between the two. You can see it jump to 120 again for no reason. So we're going to go back out again. And we will change the settings one more time to see how this one works. But basically this time we're going to keep everything the way it is, except for we're going to change our refresh rate to 60, and we're going to VSync to 60 hertz. Now with VRR on our TV on, it should be able to drop right down to that 60, no problem. So it's not a big deal that we're telling the game that our monitor is only 60 hertz. VRR should work perfectly fine on our TV and say, oh, this thing's only sending me 60 hertz. I need to be at 60 hertz. So let's run another benchmark and we'll see what happens. You can see that our stream, whenever you go to a loading stream, it kind of has to like rebalance itself. But you can see the game is sitting at 60 and our stream is sitting at 61. You're always going to get that slight variation of like 59 to 61. So you can see the game pretty much locked at 60. And you can see our TV, again, dropped to 42, 65, 57. You can see it's trying to sit right there at that 60. But for whatever reason, it can't just say, I'll only do 60. And there it is, 60, but down to 45 for no apparent reason. Again, the game is running really smooth, and any of the stutter is going to be, very minimal. But again, we're trying to point out that this can be what's giving you those like very slight stutters, or just those stutters that happen out of nowhere. And you think, oh, it's my internet. It's really not your internet. You see here, still really smooth. Actually playing a lot better than what we were getting at the 120 without the VSync. But there's still little teeny slight stutters in there, but just they're nowhere near as blatant or egregious as it was at our last try. Okay, so now the absolute best way we're going to get playing at this, well, maybe we'll try one more thing. So we can get a lock 60 from the game and the stream, no problem at max settings, because it's usually going to run about 77. But what we want to do now is we actually are going to try to turn off VRR. And the reason why I say that is because the game is playing at a lock 60. And since the TV would display 120 hertz all the time when we turn off VRR, there should be no issue with it displaying that, because what the TV is basically going to do is see it's getting 60 frames coming in. It's just going to double those frames right into 120, and it should work perfectly because 60 goes into 120 evenly. So we keep everything the same. We're going to tell the game it's at 60. We want a VSync at 60. And let's run our benchmark. It's just crazy. It's also crazy how good the game looks, considering this is just being played over an internet connection. And funny enough, this is being played over a cell phone internet connection. But you can see right there, it stuttered a little teeny bit. But for the most part, yep, there's a little more stutter. So we're actually might be getting even a little more stutter than we were getting when we let the TV do the VRR. So even though it's playing really good, again, you want as minimal stutter as possible. So what I want to do is we're going to back out, because we know that's giving us a little bit of stutter. So we're going to get out of that benchmark. Let's try to move this around a little bit just to hopefully not let it time out. And now this time we're going to give the TV exactly what it wants. It really wants 120. And we're going to go into Game Optimizer. We're going to turn VRR and G-Sync back on. Right there. Turn that on. We're going to tell it, hey, we got a 120 hertz monitor. We want to VSync at that. We're going to turn on DLSS, because that's the only way we're going to hit 120. With DLSS, you actually get at quality. We're going to get higher than 120. So it should be no problem locking at this 120. We're going to apply those changes. And you can see our stream jump right back up to 120. And all the graphics are the same. The only difference is it takes away our anti-aliasing. We go straight into DLSS. We don't have the other one we were using. And now we will run our game benchmark. So now you can see the game is running at, it's going to be right at 120 at all times. Pretty much I locked 120. You see our stream is sitting at about 120 all the time locked. Now you can see our TV is not jumping around. Like it's super happy right now. It's like, oh, these are all the frames I'm asking for. I don't have to adjust down. I don't have to adjust up. I don't have to do anything. I just get to sit here and just get a full plate of frames that I'm looking for. I want a 120, I got a 120 hertz container. I want 120 frames. That's what I'm getting all the time. So now you can see that not only does the game look amazing still, but the stutter is pretty much eliminated. Now, when you go to those loading screens, you'll see like your TV does that. And sometimes when it comes out of a loading screen, you will get a slight stutter. And that's basically because it's kind of like resyncing up. But you see, once it gets into it, like everything marries back up and you get a very, very smooth play. But yeah, so this was, like I said, this wasn't like a scripted one. This was just really impromptu. It's just, I thought it would be a good opportunity to really let people see how much these settings do matter if you're someone who's really picky about slight stutter. And it's not always your internet, and it's not always GeForce Now itself. It can be just, are all three things talking in unison? Because if anything is a little out of whack, it's going to give you stutter. And if you don't know about those things having to be in unison, you'll always blame it on something that is not the problem. And if you're blaming it on something that's not the problem, you're never going to fix it. You're never going to figure out why it's happening. So I hope this video helps some people out there and maybe explains it a little better for people who might be dealing with this issue. Now, it doesn't mean that it's not your internet, and it doesn't mean it's not your PC. It's just letting you know that there are other factors that could be giving you that slight stutter that are not those two most blamed components. So, like I said, I hope this video helps some people out there. Hope you find it informative, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.